Good morning, guys. How y'all doing today?
We're doing well. Happy to hear your voice, sir. I will ask you this. We'll go back to Saturday, a little quick flashback. Your takeaways overall from the game on Saturday, just kind of obviously it's weird. I was telling Lloyd we were walking in Monday morning that 2-0 is feeling eerily similar to 1-1 because the question mark started to rise after the win over Louisiana Tech.
Yeah, we're really good at complaining.
Well, it's one of those games where you're kind of in a no-win situation. If you win 45-3 like you're supposed to do that. And if you win like LSU did 23-7, then it's a ugly game. And certainly it was for a lack of better description, pretty boring night in Tiger Stadium. Could have taken a nap in the press box there. Not a whole lot happening. I think that you go into that game hoping to score more than 2 touchdowns offensively. Certainly you go to Clemson, they've got a great defense. They've got All-Americans, and to get out of there with a 17-10 win, you're thrilled with that. But in this game, your offense was just really choppy all night, never really in the flow. And the most disappointing sequence to me is late in the game. You still got your first stringers in there. You're first and goal at the 5. And you can't punch the ball in against Louisiana Tech. I mean, I know it's 3-3-5 defense, and it's hard to run against and this and that. But I think if you're LSU, you should be able to, punch the ball in late against Louisiana Tech. And instead you're kicking a chip shot 18-yard field goal with like a minute left or whatever it was. And so I remember a year ago at this time, kind of the same thing. The LSU played nickels. I think their longest play from scrimmage was rushing play was 12 yards. And the Guggenheim guy broke off a 70-yarder and had 150 yards or something like that. Now, look, they had 129 yards rushing at LSU in this game, but 48 of it came on a play to Xavier Thomas, who's a wide receiver. It counts, but it's not your traditional, rushing attack. And then Harlem Berry ripped off a 43-yarder late, so there's 91 of your 129 in the game. So, and then Garrett Nussmeier's only thrown 2 touchdowns through 2 games. Early on, Berry and Brown was behind the defense. The ball was underthrown into the inside. It gets deflected and intercepted. And there were some other plays in the passing game that were there that were missed. So I think that was kind of the disappointing takeaway from that game. On the flip side, you still won the game. I think South Florida is a better team than Louisiana Tech, but Florida played an ugly game and they lost. So you certainly take the alternative and be 2-0. But I think still some of the questions about, can this team run the football? Can they have balance in their offensive attack? Those questions are still there. But, certainly the defense was upset, talking to Wes weeks after the game about giving up the 1 touchdown. It was like, well, the positive from this game is that LSU is going to pitch a shutout. There goes the shutout. Deep pass. And so, but the defense has been obviously very, very good. And it's kind of funny because before the year we said this offense is going to score points, plenty of points. If the defense can just do half a decent job, they'll have a big year. Well, the defense has really exceeded expectations, and the offense kind of has not to this point.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, did you get the same feeling of it was almost a flashback to 2024 once Braylon Moore went down, Chester came back in, and the run game kind of dissipated, and it felt like we were watching the 2024 LSU offense rather than the offense you saw game 1 of 2025 against Clemson?
Well, I did a sit-down with Todd McClure the other day from Central there, and a guy who played center at LSU and then played 14 years in the NFL with the Falcons. And right after the Clemson game, we talked about Braylon Moore and how your center can have a calming presence and how it all starts with him. Brian Kelly had praised Braylon Moore when people were questioning this offensive line in the preseason leading up to the first game, that it all starts with your center, and it's all falling into place nicely because of Braylon Moore. It's a guy that, he's a senior coming over here. He's played a lot of football, lots of snaps, veteran guy. And so you can't understate his importance. And so, he goes down on the first play of the game and things shift. And yeah, I mean, just off the top of my head, it kind of felt a bit like last year in terms of the offensive line and just not being able to push people off the ball. And and kind of in a game like that, you expect, even if you can't in the beginning, you expect to eventually exert your will against the Louisiana Tech, who, look, they played well. They've been to their share of bowl games and had nice seasons and sent their share of people to the NFL, and certainly LSU's two top coordinators, and Joe Sloan and Blake Baker both coached at Tech for a while. So I'm sure they're saying, hey, give us some credit. We played pretty well. And when a lot of guys are on your roster from Louisiana going up against LSU, it's their Super Bowl, and they want to do well, and they did. But, overall, I just the LSU's offense, the inability to get in the end zone was disappointing. Certainly, I think Chris Hilton only has that one catch on the fourth down at Clemson through two games. It was good to see Nick Anderson get involved, the guy from the LSU guy from Oklahoma. It was short passing, but he did catch one of the touchdowns in the game. But offensively, it was still a bit disappointing.
Yeah, and talking about the run game, you brought up the Xavier Thomas runs, and I wanted to ask you, we were talking with Rohan Davey and Kevin Falk over the weekend, and they brought those plays up pretty consistently of kind of saying that you don't have a run game if your best plays are coming from a gimmick. And I wanted to ask you, like, in your experience watching LSU football and the dominance they've had running the football, especially, before now, and now you are having to rely on kind of a gimmick play with one of your better athletes to consistently get yards in the run game. How concerning is that they're not able to just turn around and hand it to a running back and consistently get yards and have that balance?
Yeah, it's concerning. I glanced at the stats yesterday. I think Caden Durham has 30 carries for 103 yards or something like that through two games. His average is not good. They haven't been able to, outside of his run on the first play of the game when he was stood up and put his hand in the dirt and turned it back the other way for 24 yards. They've had a hard time of, getting him going so far this year. And I think when you watch the game this weekend, that's going to be a big thing. I mean, certainly Brian Kelly brought it up that last year when LSU in mid-November went to Gainesville and couldn't beat Florida, they couldn't score in the red zone and kicked too many field goals and only scored one touchdown and lost the game 27-16. And certainly Florida got after Nussmeier. They sacked him 6 times and had 11 tackles for loss. So you need that. You need the running game to keep the defensive line off your quarterback and at least keep them honest a little bit. And Florida, lost a low-scoring game to South Florida, but defensively they played a pretty strong game overall. And if LSU can't run the ball and Nussmeier's dropping back and running around and freelancing kind of like he was this past week, that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for more timing and plays and rhythm and so forth. And yeah, I'm a little concerned about, Caleb Jackson has been no factor at all through 2 games. Kind of hoping that he would get going a little bit, but we'll see what happens there. But the only running backs really they've handed the ball to is Caden Durham and Harlem Berry, late in the game there the other day. And certainly we'll see if Harlem Berry has earned himself some more reps. But once again, when it comes to running back, your number one priority is not to run the football, it's to block and, not get your quarterback killed. And so how Harlem Berry, does with that aspect of the game will play a large role in how much he plays.
You mentioned Florida, and from a historical perspective, I'd like to get your take on it, because from my life experience, obviously Alabama lives amongst it in a different world because of the Nick Saban factor, but for my 2 cents, I would say it's been LSU-Florida has been one of the more dominant. When LSU's looking for a rival, it feels like I always go back to LSU-Florida. What's your take on how Florida lives in amongst that realm whenever LSU only gets them every so often, and it feels like every time something happens?
Yeah, Lloyd, my first LSU football game that I ever attended was in 1987. LSU played Florida in Tiger Stadium. LSU won 13-10. It was the week after the infamous 13-13 tie to Ohio State. Emmitt Smith was a freshman on the Florida Gators. He ran wild, but LSU won the game. Florida had a 37-yard field goal to tie it up, and it was wide left in Death Valley. And then, they were pretty good back then. They were ranked in the top 20, but they weren't a power. Then Spurrier comes along and starts throwing it all around the yard with Shane Matthews. And then they kicked LSU's butt for basically 12 years. I think LSU was 1-11 against Steve Spurrier, and you just the one victory being the 1997 when they were number one, came to Tiger Stadium. LSU beats them 28-21. Kevin Falk on the front cover of Sports Illustrated. That was the one time LSU beat Spurrier. I mean, you were scared to play them because they were the power, and they were not afraid to run up the score with Spurrier, and it happened a lot. 58-3, Florida in 1993 beat LSU in Tiger Stadium. I was sitting there watching it. I think they had 60,000 people. The late Adrian Karsten doing a stand-up in the south end zone that was empty, saying, well, this used to be the most feared place in America to come play a game. Now no one's here, But yeah, it was, and then, Jacob Hester and Flynn and those guys, they'll tell you the team they hated the most was Florida. Certainly it became a very intense rival. The Tim Tebow games, the 2007 game is one of the more famous games in Tiger Stadium history. I wasn't in the stadium, but a lot of people say it's the greatest game they ever saw there. And then in recent years, I was at the station. I was anchoring. So I think Steve was there, and I was there back, cutting the highlights and getting ready to anchor the sports.
Johnny is getting ready to learn.
Yeah. John does a good job with everything we give him, but his least favorite thing to do is anchor. He'd rather be out in the action, reporting or shooting or doing something like that.
The 2007 LSU-Florida game, which is
indubitably
one of the greatest games at Tiger Stadium, and you're in the studio and you love LSU so much.
Yeah. They went for it on fourth down 5 times. Paraloo got in, had a big touchdown. Tebow threw the ball in the end zone the last play. LSU knocked it down.
Chad Jones.
Chad Jones knocked it down. Florida had lost the week before. They had kind of taken some luster off the game. I think Auburn beat them on a field goal at the very end in the swamp. But, that's a famous game. 2009, they came back, a typical Les Miles game. Couldn't move the ball, couldn't score any points, lost 13-3 in a CBS primetime game to the Gators. After that, I mean, Florida's had – they hired a string of coaches whose the names begin with M. Let's see, they went from Muschamp, McElwain, Mullen, and had what's that?
Shark Attack.
Yeah, the Shark. I was never a big fan of that guy. He was a bit prickly, Jim McElwain. And then obviously Napier now. And, I like Billy Napier. I'm not a big fan of the Sun Belt Billy and all that. I think he's in a pressure cooker. There's no doubt. And if he doesn't win enough games, they'll have to part ways with him. But I've never seen him, be a jerk or mistreat people or have big blow ups. I think he takes ownership for what they do and is a good man and a good coach. And, I'm rooting for his success over there. He's done, obviously he did things with the Raging Cajuns that nobody has ever come close to doing over there. So, not rooting for him this weekend, obviously, but, hopefully he can steady the ship and do a good job. But, Florida and also Lloyd, was LSU's permanent opponent for all those years. With the SEC, you played everybody from the West and you had one permanent crossover. And certainly the people were complaining about LSU had Florida and then Ole Miss had Vanderbilt. Alabama had Tennessee when Tennessee was down. And so I think Joe Oliva and Les Miles kind of campaigned for a while to get that off the schedule. And, eventually in our new format, it's been there, but eventually LSU won't play Florida every single year. And so I also thought growing up thinking about the University of Florida, what must be an amazing place, like, beaches and, sandy beaches and blue water and all that. And, it's got some nice palm trees, got a nice climate, but it is in this minute. I've called it Tuscaloosa with palm trees. That's kind of what Gainesville is. And you talk to LSU fans, their least favorite places to go. Seems like nobody really enjoys going to Gainesville, which is funny because you think going to Florida would be nice, and a lot of fans don't think that way.
Some would say it's heartbreaking.
What's that? Heartbreaking?
Yes, it's Tom Petty.
Yeah. Well, I was in the minority a while back and thought, seeing it all play out, I know that Florida had kind of promoted all week long, hey, we're going to play, don't back down at the end of the third quarter into the fourth. And the LSU band, they just played while they were doing the tribute, and a lot of LSU fans like that. And I think Cobble's the one that got the guy, the shot of the guy flexing his muscles, the LSU fan flexing while they were doing it. But I think there was a misunderstanding. I guess for whatever reason, the Golden Band didn't know they were doing this tribute. And we had simultaneous music going on, and the Florida fans were losing their mind, booing, telling the LSU band to shut up while they were playing a track.
And I won't back down.
Oh, he sang it.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of
Tom Petty.
Don't come around here no more. That was another one.
My mother describes him as the ugliest, sexiest person to ever grace the stage. Rest in peace.
Hey man, great songwriter. Last Dance with Mary Jane, Free Fallin'. I mean, he had countless hits. I think if you go see him live, he probably wasn't exciting. He probably stood in one place, but
ugly as hell.
Yeah, he had those teeth, man, and passed away early. I think he left us at, I think he was 66 when he passed. That's pretty young these days. So, a lot of people loved him. Stevie Nicks from Fleetwood Mac. They did that duet in the late 70s. Stop Dragging My Heart Around. I went to see Stevie Nicks in concert, I don't know, about 10 years ago. And half the show, she just talked about Tom Petty. I used to hang around with Tom Petty. I was in the studio with Tom Petty. It's on and on and on. So
that's so good.
Yeah, Stevie Nicks has that, that voice.
She bleats.
Yeah. Saturday Night Live one time did a spoof. It was called Stevie Nicks Tex-Mex Cafe, and they did a goof on like Landslide, and she was like, and I saw my reflection in the refried bean hills. So.
Well, JD, I want to ask you, you brought up fans. BK went up on the podium and told the Tiger fans to show up and show out on Saturday. What are your expectations for LSU-Florida Saturday night in Death Valley this Saturday?
Well, it's going to be a hot day. I don't think we've got any rain in the forecast, so that's good. But these very, very nice mornings we've had the last couple of mornings, I think that's going away. We're going back to the sweat this weekend. Steve Caparata was really funny the other day because I played a little clip of Brian Kelly making fun of himself. Like after the Louisiana Tech game, he raises his fist up and he kind of pump fake like he was going to hit the table, but he didn't. And he said they make memes of that, like after when they lost to USC last year, and he hit his fist on the table, and Caparata is like, "We're going to be in the 90s again. Here we are again in the 90s." So it's going to be hot, but I expect the fans to show up. I expect it to be packed. I expect it to be loud. It's the SEC opener. The Tiger Stadium crowd and how loud they are is always in direct proportion to the threat of the opposing team. And certainly Florida is a threat, and I agree with Brian Kelly that they're going to get the best version of Florida, especially after losing to South Florida. So, gold out. I don't know how fans feel about different colors and this and that. Not coincidentally, the guy they're using to promote this game is Jack Pyburn up on the billboards, the former Florida Gator. I'm sure he'll be playing very salty and motivated against his former team. So, I expect a loud crowd. It looks like hopefully LSU is sticking with the traditional uniform. I think we had I think LSU had just as many victories last year, 8 as uniform combinations, 8. It's so funny. They fought for the traditional uniform. Jerry DiNardo goes to the NCAA. Hey, can we please wear white jerseys? And then now we're changing it every week. It's like, okay, every now and then's okay, but LSU, their traditions, they're known gold helmets, white jerseys, gold pants. Stick with your tradition. So if I'm an old man
on Saturday.
Yeah, the mustard ones against Vandy, I don't know. Those are a little different, but we'll see. I guess they're going to wear the